I have my guest now joining me in the studio. Dr. Sam Omale is the President CEO, Rock Global Investment Network, London. He's also an international capital market professional, a former governorship candidate in the 2023 governorship election in Kogi State. He joins me right here in the studio. We'll be speaking to him from London, but he's here in Nigeria. And of course, he graciously joined us here in the studio. Glad to have you in our studio.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. We appreciate
it.
Before we go into the MPC, when those reports were going on, you were raising some concerns, especially with regard to Nigeria first policy, and of course, what we're seeing in Qatar, moving away from, using their revenue from the crude oil to develop their country, and of course, attract tourists to that country. What should we learn from that kind of development?
You know, like we're saying off camera, the Nigeria first had been on for a very long time when we carried out what we called indigenization policy, where we indigenized most companies that were operating in Nigeria. And also the content of raw materials for manufacturing, there is a percentage that must be locally sourced. This was way back in the 80s. So it's not that as if we have not had Nigerian first thing, just a new name, maybe just borrowed from America, Trump just now. Nigeria, every country will want to protect its economy first. It's not something that is should be an ideology. It's something that you have to do. Take care of your economy first. Everything should have to be about your interest.
Indeed.
Then to talk about diversification, Saudi Arabia, through Aramco, diversified from oil long ago, long ago. They have gone into solar, they have gone into tourism, same with UAE. And we are just sleeping, waiting on this crude oil that is not going to be sustainable, especially in the light of the renewable energy going to the era of clean energy. In some countries in Europe, by next 5 years, petrol will also be useless. So we're not even thinking ahead. And so there's all the reason why we must immediately begin to be serious about this thing, not just sloganism. Because what I hear is just sloganism. What is Nigeria first? What does it mean? What does it mean? Just do something.
Indeed, we need to put in the works instead of the slogan. The slogan will not in any way help. But let's go to the main topic for today, the MPC, talking about the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria. They are meeting today to determine or set a new rate for Nigeria. Key factors that will influence that decision is the inflation numbers that we saw last week that was released last week by NBS. What do you think there should be the focus today? Are we likely going to see the first MPR moderation under Governor Cardoso?
That's a tough one for him, and also because this is the first time he's having some data to do anything with. If I should give my straightforward advice, he should just still keep things as they are. He needs more time and more data to consolidate on a decision of either way, either jacking it up or reducing it. That would be my candid opinion. Leave it as it is. Let's get it. They left it in since February, right? February was the last time they met.
The last meeting, exactly.
Still, even if it's 1 month more. Let's see, because there's so many activities that are stochastic in nature. They just come in, but like now it's harvest time. So food are all over, and it gives you a wrong, false sense of so they should just wait. If I'm and more likely, I think, luckily, I think, because I've read each of them, their reports of last time, each of them seems to be very dovish. I don't see any of them that is hawkish at all in that committee, which is neither good or bad, but they should, if I'm to give my kind of opinion, they should leave it as it is and not to touch it.
Do you think we are overburdening the CBN? It does appear that the monetary policy is doing much more than the fiscal authority.
That is a good observation, and that's what I've been saying for a long time. CBN is set up to regulate the economy, and they regulate it through the policy tools, monetary policy tool that is in their hands. And unless their efforts is balanced by the fiscal authorities, every effort will fail. And which is why I've been telling the previous administration that, look, this hiking of interest rates will not work. Okay, if I may do some small economics. Inflation, for example, is the source of the cause of inflation is twofold. Number one, you have the demand pool. and we have the cost push. Now, the demand pull comes when, for example, there's a great government spending, physical. When the government reduces its tax, physical. When there's wage increase, physical. The only instrument the central bank has in that side is interest rate and foreign exchange rate. On the other side of the cost push is when there is liberalization, there's high earnings are coming in, and raw materials into the for manufacturing is expensive. So the cost in the first one, the aggregate demand moves to the right, and in the cost push, the supply aggregate supply moves to the right, to the left. So of these 6 or 7 factors that you consider on both sides of inflation, central bank has only 3 to play with: interest rate, exchange rate, and volume of cash in the system. So they're overburdening the central bank. Whatever, and again, I think this is what we're missing. Inflation or every economic indicators we're seeing are a byproduct of the environment, of the fiscal environment. So I saw just now that manufacturers, the cost of manufacturing, energy cost, 44%. I mean, you can't be in business that way. That's not the fault of central bank. That is the fiscal authority to fix the energy situation in Nigeria. And the central bank, over the years, based upon themselves, the previous central bank was almost behaving like a developmental bank, which we call it prophecy.
All right, Doc, hold your thought today. Let's go on a very quick break. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. Don't go away. Glad to have you back. It's the Business Daily right here on Trust Television. Doc, before we went on that break, you were making a very important statement. You were giving us some very important information.
Yes.
Can you go ahead and
I was saying that, just like you observed, the central bank, the role of central bank is very clear. Is to regulate the economy. If it's hot, it brings the temperature down. If it's cold, it raises the temperature. That's its role. That is financial system stability. And he does that through banking supervision of the banks and other things. So his role is clear. But over the years, before this present central bank administration came on, the previous central bank seems to be behaving like it's a developmental bank, and the intervention all over the place.
Exactly.
That actually caused inflation. It was inflationary. All the actions were inflationary. So it led to the self-fulfilling prophecy of trying to fight inflation, but actually creating it. So there should be, and at that time also, there was no synergy between the fiscal authority and the monetary authority. In fact, there was one time the central bank made an announcement. The Minister of Finance said they were not aware.
Absolutely.
But so the opposite is the case now. I think recently there's a meeting now. I think there's a committee or a meeting now that is set, or that there is a regular meeting between central bank and the Minister of Finance, which is very good. If they don't work together, nothing will work, because the inflation rate we are seeing, unemployment, all these macroeconomic indicators are a byproduct of the fiscal authority's decisions. Government spending, tax reduction, VAT increase. So there are actions that central bank cannot. Like I told us before, of all the causes of inflation, whether it's on the demand pull or on the cost push, central bank has only 3 instruments to play with. So if the energy, like I was saying also, manufacturers are paying the cost of manufacturing, energy is gone over 44%. That is no good. That's why many businesses are leaving. Can't we fix the energy situation once and for all? That alone can bring down the cost of production that fuels this rising cost that we think is inflation.
Indeed, but at this point now, especially with regard to synergy between the CBN and of course the fiscal authority, talking about the monetary and fiscal authority now, do you think we're getting it right with what we are having right now? Because it does seem, you made mention about the former CBN leadership, where they actually deviate from their core mandate into a lot of interventions and so many
this intervention for inflationary.
Exactly, which you alluded to. Do you think we're doing something that will take us away from there? Because the inflation number we're having, a lot of people are saying is still not really the right inflation numbers that we should even have. Some are saying that we are being economical with the truth.
Yeah, well, whether it's high or low, there are other international bodies that give all these statistics. So if you want to have a realistic inflation rate, you don't just look at National Office of Statistics, Central Bank, go to Bloomberg, go to World Bank, go to development banks and other investors who are on ground anyway. They're collecting this data and they have their own. So you can have kind of index, a kind of an average of what inflation is. So the problem, what I will observe is this. Why is it that in developed economies, inflation targeting is 2%? They're targeting 2%.
Single digits.
2%, not just single digits, 2% is the target. I want to know what's the target of Nigeria, for example.
We're targeting single digits. According to the government. But if you look at the 2025 budget, it's 15%. The target is around 15%.
Okay. So the question I'm asking, how is it that, because even in the height of financial crisis of 2008-9, the highest interest rate went, what, about 11%? Even in Spain. Do you understand? So the problem with third world or Nigeria is more of fiscal policy, it's a fiscal problem, that so many institutions are now working, so many things, the leadership is not there, the issue of rampant corruption has eroded every confidence. So until we fix the economy, we are not going anywhere. So that one can do all they can, but it will be frustrated. Like I said, inflation, interest rates, all that are a byproduct of what's happening on ground.
Absolutely.
So if they're using 44, the energy cost is 44%, they're going to put that on top of what they're going to produce for you and I. And so that is it. But I think you asked the question, I think there's a synergy now. I think there's an understanding between...
But the question is, the understanding really working?
Yeah, they just started. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they just started. That's why I said they should give
2 years
time.
Down the line.
Well, yes, but it takes time. By the time you get the direction of the central bank and the direction, the vision of the government, and they come together and they give the central bank independence, then until the central bank has its independence, we are just even wasting our time. So if central bank has its independence to frankly advise the government. For example, during the last previous administration, ways and means was abused.
Absolutely.
Whereas there's a policy, there's a law within the central bank law that you cannot
go beyond 5%.
Exactly. Yes, but they're abusing it. So because that person may not have independence, he was just under the control of the presidency. But this governor, I think, has independence, and he should even ask for more to operate from a professional point of view.
Maybe part of the problem is also this the process of appointment. When it just like he who pays the piper dictating the tune. If the president is the one appointing you, subject to the confirmation of the National Assembly, in most cases you may tend to do the bidding of your master.
But not all people. I think one other television program station asked me that question, and I said, if you have deemed this person qualified, capable of doing this job, give him hand to advise you professionally and frankly. And I said at that time, I said, if I would advise any governor who is being made as a robot to resign, just leave the job, because your name will be online. You are the one who, whatever happens to the economy, the box, central bank is the one to blame, because you are the manager of the economy. So my advice is that, look, if you have employed somebody, allow him to advise you correctly. If you have a personal physician, will you want him to be diagnosing you? You want him to say, okay, everything's okay, whereas you are not okay. Central bank's role is like that. That's why we are always crying for the independence. In America, once you appoint the governor, the chairman of the Fed. That's all. You cannot remove him. It's not even possible. It's tough. That's why I can see people like Alan Greenspan. He went through about 4 or 5 different administrations. So we should have that kind of independence, so that central bank governor can sit down and work, knowing that his life is at stake. Whatever people say it's about him, he has to be able to defend that. But to do that, give him a free hand. You are going to advise the president professionally and not like a politician.
Indeed, advising the president like professionally. We hope Nigeria will get there in the long run. Because if you look at what is happening now, it does seem that the president controls almost everybody, even including his ministers. But let's look at where we are coming from in terms of MPR. In 2020, we ended around 13.5%. In 2021, 11.5% reduction. 2022, 16.5%. 2023, 18.75%. 2024, 27.25%. And of course, currently 27.50%. And of course, if you just oppose that with the inflation number, is very, very tricky because of the rebasing. Because the rebasing did brought down inflation drastically now. Yeah. Given what you have highlighted, and where we are in terms of MPR, what if you are in this shoe now of Mr. Olayemi Kaduso now, and you have about 8 or 9 deputy governors to consult in order to arrive at this decision tomorrow? What would be your appeal to them, looking at the environment, looking at some of the issues that you have raised?
Yeah, you see, like I said, there are 2 sources of inflation. Let's stay on the cost push. The question they should ask themselves is, what's the percentage of Nigerians that actually go to borrow money from the banks? I bet you, I actually want to do that at 6. I want to know that at 6. So it's only the manufacturer, only very few people go to borrow money. So these interest rates will not affect, and it won't affect them, because whatever cost of funding they have, they put it in their products. So you're actually punishing the consumers.
Yes, exactly.
So he should be able to, I mean, I don't know who he stands, whether he's dovish or hawkish, I don't know, but he should be able to, each of them should analyze, because each of them are looking at the same data, the same implications. They have the implications of every item that formed that decision to say, increasing, okay, I think there's something I said, if you see the graph of MPC reports over the years, and you see the graph of inflation, actually it's not affecting it.
Absolutely.
As they raise inflation, I mean the interest rate, inflation also goes up.
Absolutely.
And yet the reason of interest rate is to quell, that's to tell you that the percentage of the populace that borrow money from the bank is almost non-existent. Only specific companies, SMEs. I mean, SMEs even have access
to
to
funding.
And the SMEs that we have in Nigeria, they have their own special fund, maybe from Bank of Industry and all that. So they should have more time to look at the reality on ground and say to themselves, interest rates, if we increase, I will not increasing the cost of production. I will not putting increasing the burden on the push side, and therefore it will be self-defeating. So, and they should come with a definitive target and work towards it, again in conjunction with the Minister of Finance or the fiscal authorities.
Indeed, your argument does seem to align with the IMF advice to the CBN that they should continue on the tightening side of MPR there. Well, let's look at, you talk about the issue of borrowing. We understand our banks don't even do much in terms of rebanking. Many of them are into profit-making business. They don't really support small businesses as such. So in that case, so the cost of whatever the CBN do does not really affect the small business owners in this case. But what do you think is going to be the impact of a high MPR on the larger economy? I mean, you talk about manufacturers who in the long run transfer the cost to the consumers.
See, the other risks that we didn't talk about, which are very important, the cash reserve ratio, for example, and also the interbank rates. the rates that set up. I mean, commercial banks deposit money. They put money in the bank, the central bank, and central bank pays them interest, and they lend each other. So those rates are also important. We want to know the movement of those rates. I've always argued that if central bank is paying commercial banks 11%, 12% of reserves, then why should I, as a banker, do anything? Because, like, Nigerian banks are not doing banking. The core banking function is financial intermediation.
Absolutely.
The largest source of income revenue for banks is creation of assets, loans. Is their number one source of income, net interest income. The next one is investment of the income they have, and also consultancy advice they give. But if it's Nigerian banks, how many consulting firms do they have? What are they earning from there? What are they even earning from the debts, from the loans they create? Are they creating loans? So Central Bank should make sure that banks are efficient. Efficient means that their core business model, which is creation of assets, should be emphasized. In those days, they used to have statutory allocation. They used to have, you must lend this percentage to agri, you must lend this, which was like regimented management. But it worked well. But Central Bank should also focus on how banks are using their sources, because they're actually doing trading. Like any money, you ask yourself, how is it that commercial banks in Nigeria, announce or declare these humongous profits? How? Where is the source of that? It's not coming from loans. So the income central banks, commercial banks are declaring, does not translate into the real economy. We are not feeling it. Have you borrowed money from the bank before? I've tried to borrow money even from my company. I never got it. So they are not giving loans out.
Absolutely.
And the few ones,
even the conditions are still stringent.
But that's their core mandate, is asset creation. That is the model. The business model of a bank is 60, 70% creation of assets. That's where they get their income, net interest income is what their major should be. But here they do foreign exchange, they do trading, they do short-term. The short-term loan
unnecessary bank charges.
Yeah, the charges
for customers.
The charges, I've not seen. The charges is something, again, I think this administration should check, because you deposit money in a Nigerian bank without touching it, your money is going away.
Absolutely.
How is that so? Because I've given you money for you to trade with it, to do business with it, and you're still charging me for keeping it with you. So it's something that they have to, if the charges, they have to address it.
Absolutely. But before we move further now, there's a graphics there, if my director can put it up there, with regards to where we are in terms of cash reserve ratio. We're about 50%, talking about the CRR. Of course, the deposit interest rate is there by 11.19% there. If my director can put that graphics up. Of course, interbank rate is about 27.32%. Interbank interest rate 27.50%, and of course the lending rate is 17.96%. It depends on the banks that you go to for you to be able to access this rate. So if you can see those figures there, they are referenced, and they're talking about the timeline. As at April 2005, you see the CRR there around 50%. The deposit interest rate is there 11.19%. Previously it was 11.54%. Interbank rate as well is also there 27.32%. Now previously 32.48%. The interest rate is there. It's been consistent, 27.50%. Same day, of course. Lending rate 17.96%. It was previously 18.35%. Looking at these numbers now, what do you think now should an average Nigerian who is interested in going into business do to be able to have access to funds?
Usually, basic business establishment, you get money from your family members, from friends, and your savings. But the bulk of your funding, your financing, comes from the bank. Once, if you can put a bankable document that gives the bank a conviction that this business model has a market, has a possibility of yield or payback period, and it's clearly stated in your bankable document, then a bank is your source, because that's where the money is, the deposit they're having.
Absolutely.
That's what it's there for. But if Central Bank is taking 50% of that, did you say 50% is the cash ratio now? It will actually be 17%. And I'm wondering, that means straight away that only 50% of the deposits the banks have is available to make loans.
Absolutely.
Something is not even right there as well, because it handcuffs the banks from lending.
Now, is it a way of maybe withdrawing some money from circulation as a way of controlling inflation?
Again, so I think the thinking, the overall fear, I think inflation is
it's the big elephant in the room.
Is what central banks fear.
Absolutely.
They are thinking that and also bank failures. You see, if bank has excessive liquidity, there's a tendency to lend money, and as your asset grows, as the loan portfolio grows, so is the tendency that you are going to have non-performing loans. They'll be fair because you are going to be careless in your underwriting processes and all that. Anyway, so all right. But these rates are too high. Look at the rate. They're lending, the bank lending, which is 20-something%. 27, 32%.
Absolutely.
What that means is that I can make money alone without just giving to my fellow banker. I don't have to do anything. And if the lending rate is 11, now you know why they're not lending. If it's 80%, why should I lend? Do you get this point? So it's a contradiction and a self-fulfilling prophecy. But even though this 80% is the MPR, they are going to add their own. I don't know. I think maybe
in some places, some places it's even over 27-25%.
Of course, yeah.
In some banks.
But the banks are looking at the rate they get from Central Bank.
Indeed. As we begin to wrap up now, we have about 5 minutes, or they're about to go now. Let's look at how CBN decision today and tomorrow will affect the capital market. People are already, you are an international capital market expert, people are saying, already calling on investors to trade cautiously. Do you think we should wait for the CBN decision before we make decisions? I mean, before investors can make decisions on the floor?
Typically, there's an inverse relationship between capital market movement and MPR. But in Nigeria, I don't think it does. I've been saying that Nigerian economy is different. Because we wait for Fed before we trade, but you don't have to do that in Nigeria because they will announce nothing will happen. Nobody will know anything has happened. But when you're listening to the chairman of the Fed, you're looking at his eyes. The number of times he's sipping water. Every word he's saying. We analysts were looking at it, we stay all night because it will get it and it will impact. If you reduce interest rate, capital market will go up. If you increase it will go down. But it's not going down. If they increase it tomorrow, Central Bank, capital market in Nigeria will still be going. So there's a contradiction. So something is not right. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, that whether we don't have professionals to make sure that Central Bank's pronouncements make impact. The study I did, I think one of my degrees, I was trying to see how is it that decisions from central banks in Africa, they don't matter at all. 10 banks will fall in Nigeria, nothing's happening in Ghana. So we were like, we don't have impact in the place.
Maybe the business model need to be revisited.
Yes, something is wrong. Something is wrong that if they increase interest rate tomorrow, on Wednesday, the capital market in Nigeria will be rising, or there's no difference, But so something is wrong. So meaning that something is not right. Meaning that the pricing of the capital market is manually. No, not alone. That's what it is. No, that's my pressure area. You see, the pricing of shares, the pricing of shares, it should be a interplay of demand and supply.
Artificially created.
It is. I mean, because they don't work. They're not scientific.
If you look at what happened last year in 2024,
yes,
the capital market was the only segment of the Nigerian economy that outperformed inflation.
Yeah.
It's gained about 38% year to date. Yeah. If you look at the numbers, I have asked this question severally. why is the capital market gaining in an economy that is already troubled? There's hunger, people are suffering, price of things is very high, inflation is on the high side, as at that time it was over 30%, but yet the capital market kept growing.
I think one thing that had bothered me is, and if I should say it straight away, we shouldn't be trading. Nigerian market is not ripe, it's not mature for trading. It should just be for investment. Once you bring trading,
many brokers would disagree with you.
No, but what do they know? What do they? I mean, you can still do brokerage. Brokerage doesn't mean trading. Brokerage
Many of them rely on trading to make money.
No. Brokerage means you help me to buy shares. That's all. And you can make your money from the margin of how much you buy. For me, what I'm saying, the movement, the trading should be out. When you invest into real companies and the companies make profit, you earn through price appreciation and through the dividend. We are running when we're supposed to be crawling. So we want to be like the Joneses, but we cannot be. You cannot be comparing yourself to, even the capitalization is pennies. For every stock in Nigeria, we call them penny stocks.
Absolutely.
They're pennies. So why should you be? I invested in Union Bank way back 30 years ago. I think it was 10 naira. How much is it today? And with the value. So it's
indeed.
It's something has to be done.
Something indeed has to be done.
Because we're not serious.
There should be an interrelationship between all the economic segments in Nigeria. It doesn't seem to be having that right now. And of course, our CBN MPC meeting today, we hope for a favorable outcome of that decision when it eventually come out tomorrow. I must thank you, Dr. Sam Omale, President, CEO, Rock Global Investment Network London, International Capital Market Professional, and of course, the former governorship candidate in the 2023 governorship election in Kogi State. Thank you for joining us in the studio. We've been speaking to you from London. We've done that severally. Thanks for joining us here. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure being here. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
All right. With that is a wrap on the show today. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Yusuf Akogun.